Hello everyone in the Australian Conference of Economists. My name is Max Nalmoski. Today I will delve into all my findings regarding the propositions of a fat tax. In the initial part of my presentation, I'm going to be showing generally how consumption taxes impact consumer and producer welfare. I'm also going to highlight the deadweight loss to the audience. Just generally in this graph, on the horizontal axis, we have the quantity of goods or services. And on the vertical axis, we measure the price of the good or service. Before tax on the initial equilibrium, the consumer surplus, up here, highlighted in the yellow, is represented by the area above the market price and below the demand curve. It shows the benefit customers receive because they are willing to pay more than the market price for the goods. In the green, the producer surplus is represented by the area below the market price and above the supply curve. It shows the benefit producers receive because they receive more for the goods they are willing to accept. In the second graph, however, it shows the impact of consumption tax. The tax causes the supply curve to shift leftward, increasing the price paid by consumers and decreasing the price received by producers. In the consumer surplus column, this area is reduced as consumers now pay a higher price for the goods, decreasing their overall benefit. The producer surplus area is also reduced as producers now receive a lower price for the goods, decreasing their overall benefit as well. Here you can see a new column was formed, the deadweight loss column highlighted here in the orange. This is the triangle formed by the new equilibrium quantity, the demand curve, and the new supply curve. It represents the loss of total surplus society due to tax, as some transactions that were mutually beneficial no longer occur due to the higher price. Overall, this slide shows that consumption taxes impact consumer and producer welfare in several ways. Two of these include the consumer welfare. Consumers often pay more for the goods, decreasing their surplus as they are willing to pay less for the goods than they actually do after the tax is applied. And producer welfare. Producers receive less for the goods, decreasing their surplus as they are willing to accept more than the price they receive after taxes. In this part of the presentation, we're going to be using a demand and supply diagram to explain what a tax on imports, also known as tariffs, would look like, and then we'll compare the concept of a deadweight loss in the context of tariffs versus consumption taxes. Before the tariff, which is the initial equilibrium, the demand represents the quantity of goods consumers are willing to buy at various prices, whereas the supply represents the quantity of goods producers are willing to sell at various prices. The equilibrium price and quantity is the intersection of demand and supply curves, which determine the market equilibrium, which is located right around here. Although the tariff does have an impact. A tariff is a tax imposed on imported goods, effectively increasing the price paid by customers and reducing the price received by producers. A new supply curve is often imposed. After the tariff, the supply curve shifts leftward and upward by the amount of the tariff. The difference in deadweight loss compared to the last slide to this slide. The deadweight loss in consumption tax context. The cause. Consumption taxes, like sales taxes, directly increase the price paid by consumers and decrease the price received by producers, shifting the supply-demand equilibrium. Noticed by the large change in these three. The nature. The DWL, also known as the deadweight loss, arises because the tax distorts consumer and producer behavior, leading to a loss of total surplus in the economy. The magnitude. The DWL from consumption taxes depends on the elasticities of demand and supply. In the tariffs context, the DWL is caused by the increase of cost of imported goods, reducing imports and shifting the supply curve upward. The nature is that the deadweight loss from tariffs reflects the loss of total surplus due to the reduced imports and then resulting in inefficiency in resource allocation. The magnitude is the deadweight loss from tariffs depends on the elasticity of demand for imports and the ability of domestic producers to substitute for imported goods. The key differences between both of them is that the consumption taxes aim to raise revenue or discourage consumption of specific goods, affecting domestic producers and consumers. The effect is that tariffs aim to produce domestic industries from foreign competition by making imported goods more expensive, influencing international trade patterns. International implications. Tariffs can lead to retaliation by trading partners and disrupt global supply chains, whereas consumption taxes primarily affect the domestic markets. Overall, in summary, while both tariffs and consumption taxes can lead to deadweight loss by distorting market incomes, tariffs specifically affect international trade and can have broader economic and geopolitical implications compared to consumption taxes, which primarily affect domestic markets. In this slide of the presentation, generative AI, which includes technologies like GANs, general adversarial networks, and other forms of AI, can create new content, which has the potential to impact inequality in the labour market in various ways. I'm going to explore two contrasting scenarios. One where generative AI reduces inequality, and another one where it increases inequality. We'll illustrate each scenario with labour market diagrams and explain the underlying mechanisms. Scenario 1, where generative AI reduces inequality. Diagram explanation. Here, the labour market before generative AI, the supply of labour and demand of labour are the two major things. The supply of labour represents the quantity of workers willing and able to work at different wage levels, while the demand of labour represents the quantity of labour demanded by firms at different wage levels. The equilibrium wage and employment is the intersection of supply and demand which determines the wage and employment levels. The impact of generative AI. Generative AI enables the automation of certain tasks and enhances productivity in certain industries. There is an increase in productivity where firms employing generative AI can experience lower costs and increased productivity. This shifts the demand for labor. Demand for traditional manual or routine jobs, represented in D1, decreases as firms adopt generative AI. However, new jobs may emerge in AI development and maintenance. In the second graph, the new equilibrium wage and employment is that it shifts to the lower employment level and potentially lower wages in traditional sectors, but higher wages and employment in AI-related fields. Why is this? Well, the reduction in inequality. Generative AI can reduce inequality by creating high-wage jobs in AI development and creative fields where skilled workers are in demand. This can increase wages for skilled workers who develop and manage AI systems and potentially create new opportunities for entrepreneurship and innovation. Scenario 2, where generative AI increases inequality. The impact of generative AI. Generative AI technologies are predominantly controlled by large tech firms or wealthy individuals, concentrating economic gains. This will lead to technological unemployment. Automation by generative AI reduces demand for both labor in both routine and creative tasks, displacing workers. This shifts the demand for labor, which demand for both routine and creative labor decreases significantly as firms adopt generative AI for various tasks. The new equilibrium wage and employment in this next graph is that it shifts to lower wages and employment levels overall, with significant displacement in traditional and creative sectors. Overall, this results in an increase in inequality, concentration of wealth, job displacement, and wage stagnation for all non-AI related workers. Generative AI has the potential to significantly impact productivity and output in the economy, depending on how it is integrated and utilized. Let's explore the scenarios. One where generative AI boosts productivity and output, and another one where generative AI lowers leaves productivity largely unchanged. We'll use aggregate demand and aggregate supply, AD and AS, diagrams to illustrate each scenario and explain the underlying mechanisms. Scenario 1. Generative AI boosts productivity and output. The AS1, the aggregate supply, represents the total quantity of goods and services that firms are willing and able to produce at different price levels. The aggregate demand represents the total quantity of goods and services demanded by household, firms, and governments at different price levels. The equilibrium output and price level is an intersection of both the aggregate demand and aggregate supply determinants the equilibrium output and price level in this economy. The impact this may have. Generative AI enhances productivity by automating tasks, improving efficiency, and fostering innovation. This will ultimately include a increase in aggregate supply and new equilibrium output and price levels. This is caused by a boost in productivity, along with cost reduction, innovation, and higher output, as there is less labor hours and the AI is always innovative. However, in the second scenario, generative AI leaves productivity largely unchanged. This is explained by an aggregate demand and supply before generative AI, the same as scenario 1. And the ultimate challenges of implementation challenges, where AI technologies may face hurdles such as integration complexities, regulatory issues, or cultural resistance within firms, limited impact on costs, or no shift in output at all, and stagnation. In this slide, I'm going to be using a DAG to explore the empirical econometric model to assess the health and economic growth consequences of a fat tax, and why I believe it is the way to go. The fat tax would turn into less unhealthy food being consumed, as people wouldn't want to pay a higher price for junk food, leading to healthier food being consumed as an alternative, which is the key. This would lead to economic growth metrics improving and overall a lower obesity rate. A lower obesity rate leads to a healthier society, which is exactly what this fat tax aims to do. A healthier society often does lead to a higher life expectancy, which is ultimately what I believe to be the goal of life. This lower obesity rate would chain off into less obesity-related medical admissions, which means less pressure on nurses, less pressure on the healthcare environment, and less pressure overall. I believe this fat tax is imperative in helping society in a major way. Thank you all for listening, and I hope I've made a difference.